The Denver Nuggets are interested in Khris Middleton, but is he interested in leaving Dallas? We're going to talk to Marc Stein about that. And the San Antonio Spurs are the talk of the league right now because they look like true contenders. This is the weekend edition of the All-NBA Show. What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined on the weekend, as I always am, by Marc Stein, busy reporting all the latest news and notes around the NBA. Marc, how you doing today?
Adam Mares. As always, it is a frantic weekend. Mavs actually had some home games.
Yeah.
Going to see the Thunder in town tonight. Your Thunder in town.
Oh.
Got Knicks and Spurs on TV right now. There's always something going on.
There is always something going on. And unfortunately, you're reporting some bad news on my end. The Nuggets have been interested in Khris Middleton. I know that he was a potential buyout candidate a lot of teams would likely be interested in, but I think Denver was especially interested.
Yeah.
But you reported over the weekend that he might not be as interested in leaving Dallas. What's the latest on that situation?
Yeah, last night I confirmed it that he is staying put. And really, we got the hint of this when Middleton played Friday when Dallas had Memphis in town. Dallas had a back-to-back. Its first home games in 3 weeks. They played Sacramento and Memphis back-to-back. Middleton played in both games. And that when he played Friday night, that was kind of the clue. But I confirmed it for sure last night that he is staying put. He's, they've really welcomed him in Dallas. He had a huge game a week ago in a win at Indiana. He's played for Jason Kidd before in Milwaukee, so there's a relationship there. But really, I think, look, Denver was the most interested. I think that's fair to say. It's presumed that there are other playoff contenders whose identities have not been confirmed. We're also interested because Khris Middleton really was the foremost name on the buyout market at this point. But for Khris Middleton to push for a buyout, he's giving up his bird rights. Those could be valuable in the summer in a sign and trade. And look, I think the question everyone in Dallas is asking, maybe Khris Middleton is back next season. He's fit in very well. The Mavs certainly were not teaming with shooting before making the trade that sent Anthony Davis to the nation's capital. So there might be a place for Khris Middleton here next season. And so I think he decided it's better to just stay put. Also, I think another thing you got to factor in, he's been traded at the deadline 2 years in a row. Even for a vet who's been around the block, I don't think that's super fun. So, he's staying put. He's going to be in Dallas for the rest of the season. We'll see what happens in the offseason. But yes, it leaves the Nuggets with a void because this is just not a very robust buyout market. We saw, Milwaukee snapped up Cam Thomas quickly. Mike Conley, I think everybody knew Mike Conley was going to go back to the Wolves after he was traded for a second time. Once he cleared waivers, he was eligible to go back to the Bulls. Lonzo Ball was a player who generated a lot of interest and a lot of buzz on the buyout market initially, but both Golden State and Denver, teams that were linked to Lonzo Ball early in the process, it seems like they faded away. Is that about concerns about Lonzo Ball's chronic knee issues? I mean, that's a pretty common inference, I would say. So not a lot of optionality for your Nuggets to add a veteran when I think they do need one.
Are there other names? Because I mean, a lot of the names that we saw 3-4 weeks ago have been, snatched up. Lonzo Ball seems to be the last one. Are there other names and veterans out there that are circulating?
Well, I think people looked at Sacramento and thought maybe DeRozan or Westbrook would shake loose. But the reality is that hasn't happened in either case. I think that Russell Westbrook has been one of the few bright spots in Sacramento season and seems comfortable there. And I'm pretty sure a reunion with the Nuggets wouldn't have been an option there anyway, given that Russell Westbrook came out and told us the reason he declined his player option for this season was because the Nuggets asked him to do so.
Yeah.
And so I think Russ is pretty well done with Denver, even if Denver wanted him back. Now, DeMar DeRozan's situation is different because he's got a $10 million guarantee for next season. If you do a buyout, you're not just leaving the Sacramento Kings. In his case, you'd be forfeiting a guaranteed $10 million for next season. I'm sure DeMar DeRozan has not loved the Sacramento experience this season because they have the worst record in the league. But I also don't see him forfeiting $10 million to force his way out. Now, look, we should note, just to be clear, you and I are talking at roughly 2:30 Eastern on Sunday.
Yeah.
The deadline is 11:59 p.m. tonight. This doesn't work like a typical waiver situation. Like, you would have had to be waived Friday to clear waivers by today. That is not in effect when it comes to the buyout eligibility deadline. The way this deadline works is, as you just have to be waived by March 1st, 11:59 p.m. Eastern, March 1st. If you've been waived by that deadline, you can sign with a team on the last day of the regular season and still be eligible to play in the playoffs with that team. You don't have to join your next team by March 1st. You just have to be off your last team's payroll by March 1st. So look, we theoretically have 9+ hours to go. And it has happened before. We have seen it where, this is purely hypothetical, but let's just imagine that Team X reached out to DeMar DeRozan's camp and said, we really, really need you. And what if they made some convincing pitch? I guess that is theoretically possible in the next 9 hours. But at this point, there really isn't much smoke or many whispers suggesting that something like that is happening. And like I said, with Khris Middleton, I got the word last night that, again, the clock has not struck 11:59 p.m. Eastern, but the teams that wanted him have pretty much conceded that he's not leaving Dallas.
Well, one of the things I'm thinking about, if you look at a team, and Denver is one of these teams that has an open roster spot, a 15th roster spot, Lonzo Ball is a concern because of his knee issues. But if you add him, or if you don't add him, you don't have him. If you add him, you might have him for a little bit. And I think Denver, look, they could use somebody in a playoff, some more depth, but they have good depth when everybody's healthy. They really need bodies to get through these final 20 games. It seems to make sense to me that Denver would take a risk. If everything else falls away, why not sign Lonzo Ball and just hope that he's available for 4 or 5 games to get you through this last stretch?
Yeah, I got to confess to you, I don't have that answer. So I'm going to have to do some more reporting to see if that's even still on the table. Because, initially when Lonzo Ball was traded to Utah and released by the Jazz, there were really strong rumbles then that he was going to go to Golden State. And we know Golden State has greater needs right now than the Nuggets, to be honest. And Golden State didn't sign him. So I think that is an indication of where this is. But I do not want to sit here and say that I know for sure nothing's going to happen in the next 9 hours, because something might. And the Nuggets do have a need for an additional ball handler. So let's see. Also, the Mavericks just waived Tyus Jones to create the roster spot to convert Ryan Nebhard from a 2-way to a standard NBA contract. That's something that's been anticipated in Dallas for months. Tyus Jones is now on the buyout market. And I was told he was released after he was notified Friday night after that Memphis game that the Mavericks were going to let him go to create this roster spot for Nebhard. But I was told Friday night that he did have some playoff feelers. Now, does that become something? Again, we don't, now that Tyus Jones has been waived, he doesn't have to join the next team by today. Next week, it could, next week or 2 weeks from now, or at any point between now and the end of the regular season, we could find out that a playoff team wants him. So that decision doesn't have to be made today. But typically, a player in Tyus Jones' position or Khris Middleton's position, any of the veterans we're talking about, they want to know they have a landing spot before they ask for the buyout. You don't ask for the buyout and then go home and cross your fingers. Usually, you've got somewhere to go.
Well, we'll have to wait and see tonight. Maybe there'll be a surprise. Like you said, we got about 12 hours here, a little bit less than 12 hours to see if any teams buy out any more players, and I'm sure it'll be very noteworthy. So we'll keep our eyes on the waiver wires and see what happens, because obviously the Rockets, the Nuggets, there are a handful of teams that I think could make moves here that would bolster their chances in the playoffs. The margins are that thin. Let's take a break. On the other side, the San Antonio Spurs are getting a lot of buzz because they kind of look like the best team in basketball. We're going to talk about that on the other side. Fast breaks, buzzer beaters, and block parties are back, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all of the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite player will go higher or lower on key stats like points, rebounds, steals, and more. Get your picks right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. Nuggets and Timberwolves play today, rivalry game. Here's what I went with. Jamal Murray, 36.5 points, rebounds, and assists. Lower. This is a tough matchup for him. Jaden McDaniels, 14.5 points. Higher. Christian Brown, 11.5 points. Higher. That's what I went with. What are you going to go with? You can download the app today and use promo code ALLNBA to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code ALLNBA. Underdog. Make picks. Win money. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-MY-RESET or 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.mcpgambling.org. Arizona. 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Also want to tell you guys about Shady Rays. You guys know that moment, the one where you realize you left your favorite pair of sunglasses at the beach, on the roof of your car, at a gas station 3 states away. Well, I've been there too, but then I found Shady Rays and they've changed the game. These sunglasses are made for real life, seriously good looking, polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive. And here's the wild part. If you lose or break them, even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. I actually stepped on my sunglasses the other day when I was on vacation. Thought I broke them, fortunately didn't. But even if I did, I wasn't stressed about it. I knew I can get replacements. So now I can actually wear my sunglasses without fear on hikes, at concerts, on a boat, wherever. Shady Rays is eyewear that has your back. We've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. Head to shadyrays.com and use the code AC35 for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. And back here, segment 2 of the weekend edition of the All-NBA show. I'm with Marc Stein of the Stein Line and DLLS Mavs. Mark, I want to take you all the way back to January 21st. Let's skip the entire month of February. That was the last time the Spurs lost a game. They went the entire month of February without losing one, and now they sit just one game back of the Oklahoma City Thunder for the 1 seed in the Western Conference, and they've done it in convincing fashion. So what are people saying about the Spurs, has that changed over this last month?
Yeah, they've generated a lot of discussion this week, with the win against Detroit, going undefeated in February. Now, as we speak, again, we are on during the second half of Spurs and Knicks. The Knicks have the lead, so let's see if the Knicks can finish this one. That'd be a huge win for New York, given the way their season has kind of unfolded here and not being able to maintain the momentum that they created by winning the NBA Cup. But I think there's a couple things at work here. On one hand, the Spurs really do have something great going. And obviously it starts with Victor Wembanyama, but Stephen Castle has taken another step forward. And just the two of them, as you know, you got Castle on the perimeter and Wemby as the most feared goaltender in the National Basketball Association. Like, they've got such key elements there to having a great defense. And the Spurs are legit. And the reason you would discount them, really the only reason you would discount the Spurs, is this group has no playoff experience. Victor Wembanyama has still not logged a single playoff minute. And so in the NBA, that always worries pundits, it worries insiders, it worries analysts. Like, we're always hesitant to say that a team can do something until we've seen them on the big stage, and generally until they've failed on the big stage. I mean, playoff basketball is different than the regular season. There is no ducking that sentiment. That is the reality. But I think on one hand, San Antonio has been so good that a lot of people do see them as a true contender. But I also think, and this is where I wanted to get your take, I think it really is a broader statement about the state of today's NBA, that even the West is much more wide open than we anticipated. And there are issues. Every single team in the West right now, apart from the Spurs, has either injury or structural issues. And that includes the reigning champions in Oklahoma City, who've had a zillion injuries all season long. And so I think that's really what we're getting at here when we talk about the Spurs as a contender, that you can find something wrong with everybody on either side of the conference divide at this point.
I think it's an underrated point about the West, and this is why the final 6 weeks of the season will be fascinating. Is there's a lot of teams I still believe in, but they have gone through slumps because of injuries or because of something going on that you assume will be corrected by the end of the year. San Antonio doesn't necessarily fall into that category, but their wins are big. As you mentioned, Detroit, that's a huge win, and it was kind of a fairly dominant win, which I think was a statement for them. Obviously, they had those OKC games earlier in the year. Is there any other concern? Because I think it's understandable that they are young. They haven't been in the playoffs yet. That's a legitimate concern. But is that the only concern? Or do people talk about specific things they say? I don't know how this will work.
No. I mean, when I'm talking to people, that's the only critique of the Spurs that I hear anybody throw out there, because they really have built something here. And people forget that they've been to the lot. They have the second longest playoff drought in the league behind Charlotte. I mean, the Spurs have been out of the playoffs for 6 straight years, and they didn't just get Wemby. They got Castle and Dylan Harper too. I mean, they're so deep that Jeremy Sohan, the number 9 pick, doesn't work out, and they just waive it.
Yeah.
I mean, so again, it's funny that you talked about teams you still believe in. Like, honestly, my list in the West right now, and you're about to leave me here soon to get ready for Timberwolves Nuggets, which has become a real rivalry. I've wanted to keep believing in the Timberwolves because they still show up as a top 10 team offensively and defensively, but the Wolves repeatedly lose these games that just make you question what's going on there. And the teams you believe in list, I'm not sure at this point. I mean, the Thunder are the reigning champions, so they're going to be on it for sure. But SGA just came back from an abdominal strain, and those things can linger and come back.
Yeah.
And he's not the only health concern in Oklahoma City. I have the Nuggets on the list, but that's Jokic. That's a hat tip to Jokic and Murray and the fact that they've won one. They've had injuries nonstop all season. I don't need to tell you. Who else in the West would be on that list for you?
Minnesota, Denver, San Antonio, Oklahoma City is my top tier. I think Houston keeps winning these games where they do. The question with Houston is I don't think they're a well-rounded team, and I don't think they get the most out of all their players. But Kevin Durant is that special, and he's playing really special basketball that I'll just include him on the list. But really, it's San Antonio, OKC, Denver, and I still have Minnesota because I think they can do a lot of things that cause problems in the playoffs. And that is a lot of teams. And one of the reasons I mentioned 4, and you could throw the 5th one in if you put the Rockets, but San Antonio is right there on the doorstep of the number 1 seed. And I actually think it might be significant because you're talking about how many times are you going to have to, are you going to have to go on the road for that matchup after fighting somebody really tough in the second round, no matter what seed you are? So I'm looking at that. Remember we were talking at the beginning of the year, could the Thunder win 73 games? Obviously that's out the window. But I never thought until the last couple of weeks that San Antonio had a chance to overtake them. Now I look at the standings and go, it almost feels 50-50 to me about which team is going to come out on top when it's all said and done.
And the Spurs are 5-1 against the Thunder and Pistons.
And have the tiebreaker.
That's not nothing. Those, that it's not the biggest sample size in the world, but I mean, they've repeatedly impressed us. And Wembanyama gets better and better every day, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of unknowns in these playoffs coming up. I mean, the Rockets, they started the season and it looked like, they're actually going to be able to weather this Fred VanVleet, absence. But now they're missing Steven Adams too. And it's like they've lost. That's a big loss for them too. I mean, they still hit the offensive boards like no one else, but I don't think it's quite the same.
No.
And, there have been rumbles. Maybe Fred VanVleet comes back for the playoffs, but even if he does, how much can you really ask of him when he's missed the whole season? Even if he does come back, you've got to work him back in cautiously. So, yeah, I mean, it's just all season long. It's been the East. The East is so wide open, and I don't think the West is far off.
Well, it's going to be a really fascinating finish down the stretch. And today, I mean, the games are picking up, Mark. We're doing this, as you mentioned, during a great game right now between the Knicks and the Spurs. But the slate today is fantastic. I mean, you have good games up and down the slate, including the Nuggets and the Timberwolves, a game I have to go cover in a studio right across the hall from here. So he is Marc Stein at the Stein Line. He joins us every single weekend. You want to make sure you're subscribed. You can read him at the Stein Line. You can watch him at DLLS Mavs. Mark, thanks so much for joining.
Always good to be with you, my friend.
Everybody else, hit that like button for us on the way out. Me and Jason Tipfer back on Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week with Legs. Should be a great week. Lots of good games. We'll see you there.
We all silly like the mayor.